Viewer discretion is advised. You are listening to Wine and Crime, the podcast where two friends chug wine, chat true crime, and unleash our worst Minnesotan accents.
We do.
We do.
We do.
I'm Amanda.
I'm Lucy.
And this week we have a very special fan pick from our dear, dear, loving listener, Stacy Klein.
Stacy Klein.
Stacy
Cue
Klein.
the applause. Hey!
Stacy Klein.
Good job,
Thank
Stacy.
you so much.
Stacy's bringing us a Midwestern topic today.
They are. Our topic this week is Kansas crime.
Yeah, Kansas.
I don't know the accent in Kansas.
I feel like it's really neutral.
I feel like it's really neutral, or if I want to just create one out of my thin air high head, it's like a blend of Minnesotan and Southern. So, I'm not real sure how that would sound there, little doggy, but that's what I think.
I love your high head.
The way you talk down there.
Kansas is one of the few states I haven't been to, not even for like a layover or anything. Have you been to Kansas?
Yes, because Bill and I did like a Route 66 road trip.
Oh, for cute.
Yeah, it was so cute. That was one of our pandemic. We gotta see anything but each other and the same four walls for a couple weeks.
Yep.
Anything. So when we were like, should we just do half the country in 10 days on Route 66, which was a huge overstretch.
I mean, Route 66 goes from like San Diego to like fucking Alabama.
It stops in Santa Monica, California.
Yeah.
Like on Santa Monica Pier is like a post for this is the last bit of Route 66. But yeah, it goes all the way across.
Isn't that where that big car race ends too? In that one garage?
I think so.
Oh God, I love
it's
that.
Really
Our
cool.
Fast and Furious episode was so good.
We went into Kansas for that. I don't think we didn't stay overnight in Kansas. We stayed overnight in Kansas City, Missouri, but not Kansas City, Kansas. But we went through there.
KCMO is fun.
So fun.
But I've never actually been to Kansas proper.
Yeah, I haven't spent time in Kansas proper. I've just driven through Kansas proper.
Did you see a lot of sunflowers?
It wasn't the season because we actually went in like March, so they weren't in bloom yet. But is that a thing?
Yeah, babe. We'll get to it.
Okay.
Don't worry.
Sick.
But first, Amanda, what could possibly be our wine crime pairing for Kansas crimes?
Well, if we're doing a Kansas episode, you got to feature a Kansas winery. So I reached out to Crooked Post Winery in Kansas. And was super excited to hear about what they do. So they have a really wide variety of wines. And what I like about Midwestern and kind of smaller wineries is that they're not afraid to go a little sweet, And I think that sweet wines get so frowned down upon. They're seen as like lower class. And you know that I like to just say, how do you know a wine is good? If you like it, There's a lot of people who like sweet wine. So I really like their selection. And I love how, similarly to how Rustic Roots did, on their website, they label things with that kind of sweet to dry indicator.
I like that.
I always really appreciate that because that's
spectrum.
And that's not always on, certainly not always on bottles, but often not on a winery's website. So I love that detail. I personally was leaning toward the Perry Sunset Rosé, and I think yes,
as in the Clutter family murders.
Maybe, but yes,
I'm gonna go there.
Yeah, we're all going to go there.
Okay.
But Oh my God, I just lost my train of thought. Oh yeah. This, I think what they do is have local artists and photographers submit for their labels, because the label for this is really beautiful. It's like, it looks like a beautiful photograph that somebody like professionally took of a sunset over a lake. So I'm hoping that it's like a local sunset in like a town called Perry, or maybe it's Perry Lake. I don't know. But okay. I thought that would be cool. But hopefully I can I will find out in my follow-up email. But they describe this as smooth and sweet. It's nice and fruity. And they say it's perfect for sipping wine on late summer nights on the boat.
Sign me the fuck up.
Right? I read that and it like took me emotionally to a place that just drew me to this wine. So I don't have it in my possession because I can't get it in Minnesota. I'm hoping that they will make exceptions and maybe ship me some, because I really, really want to try it. But I wanted to shout them out, and they describe themselves as a unique Kansas winery inspired by Italian architecture and style of wine. The vineyard has 3,700 vines, and the winery has 1,500 vines. So they have all kinds of beautiful viticulture and all these varietals growing right in their winery. It's so cool.
Do you know why the vineyard would have a certain number of vines and the winery would have a different number?
Because they may be separate structures that are like part of this winery as a whole. So the vineyard,
or like the winery is like where people visit, and the vineyard is where they produce.
That's what I was going to say. So the vineyard is sort of like the back acres, like where everything's growing. But then the winery can also have, and a lot of wineries do this just because it looks so beautiful. But they'll plant grapes just outside of the winery. So they might just be considering that harvest like a smaller harvest,
like the tasting room, the visitor area. Okay,
yeah. But I don't know. They say our wine is made true to the flavor of the grape it comes from, crafted by hand and not manipulated to taste like any other wine. We use our own grown French-American hybrid grapes that are suitable for the Kansas climate in all of our wines. We use as little as possible any chemical compounds, both in the wine making and grape growing process. Which I thought was super cool. So it's very much a farm to table experience. And they're doing this. It sounds like their agricultural practice is just like more old school. So I think that is super, super, super cool, especially because pests, especially in the Midwest, like, living in the corn capital of the world and the soy capital of the world, if there's like bad pests, that really blows your grow.
It does blow your grow.
So it's pretty admirable that, any place like this would go pesticide free just in the interest of maintaining the integrity of everything. But
yeah, you're just sort of like embracing older ways of agriculture and all that stuff too, because there are a lot more holistic, less harmful to the environment ways
exactly
to control pests.
So I just thought they sounded freaking awesome. So check them out. It is Crooked Post Winery in Kansas. So yeah, I'm super excited to check out their wine. Crooked Post, if you haven't already, check your email because I slid into your DMs, babes. So, love ya. Lucy.
Yes.
What is our background, maybe psych, about Kansas crimes?
No psych.
We're going to get a flag, though.
Oh, you're going to get a flag.
We're going to talk about the flag.
You know I'm a flag hag.
Oh, yeah.
Can I say that? I don't know. I did.
I don't know, but I loved it. I'm a flag hag.
I am. Also, there will be a day.
Love a flag.
There will be a day when we get through all 50 states.
Oh, yeah.
And I will celebrate that day.
Yeah, but then you'll also be really sad.
But then I will have to independently brush up on my vexillology or whatever it is, the study of flags.
We'll just go into like every teeny tiny country in the entire world.
Oh, Jesus, help us. Okay, well, that'll keep our show afloat for a while. Okay, so let's start with some fun introductory facts about Kansas.
Yes.
So the capital of Kansas is Topeka.
Topeka.
The state is about 82,278 square miles,
Okay.
roughly.
She's thick. She's hefty.
She's not bad. Population's a bit sparse, though. We have just under 3 million people as of 2022.
Oh, wow.
So she's big, lots of farmland, lots of agriculture. Mm-hmm.
Love it.
She cute.
Love this for her.
The state has several nicknames, such as the Sunflower State,
Oh, how cute.
the
Okay.
Wheat State,
Wait, okay.
and the Jayhawk State.
Oh.
Their motto is Ad Astra per Aspera, which means to the stars through difficulties,
Okay.
which I think is beautiful.
Yeah.
Ad Astra
I'm
per
into it.
Aspera.
I wasn't a huge fan of the Brad Pitt Ad Astra, but this one is fine.
I thought that sounded familiar. What is that?
Yep.
Obviously
movie.
a movie.
A space movie.
Ad Astra.
He went to space. Think Mars.
Oh, God, help us. Okay. The state tree is a cottonwood. The state flower is the wild native sunflower. So when you asked about the sunflowers, sunflowers are abundant in Kansas.
And they're like indigenous to that area.
I think so.
That's so cool. Like
It's
sunflowers are such an incredible plant that I have a hard time reconciling that they just are naturally occurring. They grow from the ground, that they're not like man-made.
Their face follows the sun through
sun.
the day. Also, today I was at Hy-Vee and I saw white sunflowers for sale.
Stop.
They were actually like a really, really pale yellow, but
Well, sure.
they looked like glow in the dark white. You know what I mean?
Wow.
Yeah.
That sounds gorgeous.
I did not buy them.
Oh, go back. We're shutting this down.
I go to Hy-Vee a lot.
You do.
I love Hy-Vee.
I know you do.
It just smells good. I just love it. And the state bird of Kansas is the western meadowlark, which is really adorable. I have a picture of a western meadowlark and a wild native sunflower on the drive, which will be on the blog.
Oh, gorgeous.
How cute is that meadowlark? It looks
That
like a fat
bird-
goldfinch.
Yeah, their state bird matches their state flower.
Uh-huh.
Like I imagine there
black
are
and yellow.
so many cool hipster girls in Kansas with their state bird with like a sunflower behind it tattoo.
Oh, yeah.
I can picture it so clearly looking at these photos.
I mean, she real cute.
Yep. Might need to be the tattoo I get when I eventually go to Kansas.
Oh, my God. You don't need a tattoo for everywhere you go.
Don't I, though?
You only have so much dermis.
I have a lot of dermis left.
That's true.
I have an abundance of dermis.
Is there a part of your body you would never get tattooed, like your eyeball?
Butthole and inside of the lip, like in here.
You wouldn't do that?
No, I've gotten
Why?
like lipstick done. It's not necessarily about pain. It's about who am I doing this to, first of all. Second of all, the skin on the inside of the lip, it like that tattoo will be gone.
It regenerates a lot faster.
Yeah, and that's not going to hold ink the way that the skin on the outs, it's constantly rubbing against your mouth. It's constantly wet.
Mm-hmm.
It's like in
It's
the
like a
healing
different
process,
kind of skin.
you're going to lose. Yeah, you're going to lose. So I would do that. I wouldn't do like
Is that why you wouldn't do your butthole? Because it's wet?
butthole. That just sounds too painful. I have a sensitive butthole. Same with like inner labia, but like outer or like right on my fupa, like my little gunt, my mons pubis.
Can
I
you
would totally
get your
get tattooed.
inner labia tattooed?
I mean,
I guess if you got the inside of your lip, it's the same
like
thing.
you can. There are a lot of pretty epic puss tattoos out there.
Dang.
If you're ever curious, they're on Reddit.
I gotta Google.
Yeah. Turn off your safe search, though. Warning. Pro tip.
I forgot what I was Googling. Oh, I was
I forgot to
Googling.
turn on my ring light. Oh my God, I'm such a bad influencer. There you go.
Oh my God.
Sorry, John.
I was Googling like mole dicks the other day or something like that.
I'm not going to ask why.
I was with my Latin friend Ben. And I was like, I don't know. I had something to prove. I don't remember.
Yeah, always. That's why Google exists.
Googled it and it was like, do you want to turn off your safe search? And I was like, off.
Yeah.
Why has this been on?
Yeah, I thought it was already off. I'm embarrassed.
Swipe fucking right.
Yeah, I swiped right on turning off safe search.
I toggled it to the right. Okay. According to Britannica, the state's name is derived from that of the Kansa or Kaw, whose name comes from a Siouan language phrase meaning people of the south wind or wind people.
Cool.
Kansas's path to statehood was long and bloody, you might say. After the Kansas-Nebraska Act repealed the Missouri Compromise, so this basically created 2 new territories, and it opened them up to popular sovereignty, which meant that each of those states could have or not have legalized chattel slavery. So it was sort of seen as like slavery spreading to the north. It was very controversial and like, well, as we will find out, it was quite led to some violence. But that was the Kansas-Nebraska Act.
Yeah, we talked about Bloody Kansas briefly in the Whistleblowers episode.
We talked about it. Was it Whistleblowers?
Yeah,
I had it down as West Virginia crimes.
My guy had helped.
Oh, that's right.
Free enslaved people. And was part of that that fight.
What was his name again, though?
I'm sorry.
It wasn't John Brown, was it?
It wasn't John Brown.
Okay, that's who I'm talking about.
But John Brown was an accomplice of the guy that I covered.
Great. Well, that ties all of this together.
Yeah.
So we got our Bloody Kansas saying but yeah, all of these uprisings are collectively known to this time, contribute to this time being collectively known as Bleeding Kansas or Bloody Kansas. Also the Border Wars, which was sort of like between Missouri and Kansas and their southern borders. So like I mentioned, we did talk about John Brown in episode 301, which is West Virginia crimes. But obviously that was mostly in relation to his time in West Virginia. So I'm going to tell you quite a bit more about John Brown today.
Cool.
And just so you have a nice little visual, I've got pictures of him on the drive, which I highly recommend you look at, which will be on the blog. He looks like a hot, angsty Abe Lincoln.
Oh, yeah.
Do you see him?
1,000%.
Doesn't he?
1,000%. That haircut is incredible.
It's
very
nice,
ahead of its
thick
time.
hair. He looks tall.
He's got massive forehead.
Thin lips. He just like really prominent eyebrows. He looks so self-assured.
A severe crease between the eyes and forehead.
Yes.
He has especially in that for most of his life.
Type. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, he means fucking business.
Yep.
He did not come to play.
No.
John Brown was born on May 9th, 1800. He was a Taurus.
Wow.
He was born in Torrington, Connecticut, to a devout family with extreme anti-slavery views.
Wow. All right, Connecticut.
Devout Christian family, I should say. Throughout his life, he resided in Ohio, Massachusetts, Pennsylvania, and New York, primarily. Although he had many failed business ventures. I think one of them was like a wool producer or something like that. He had to declare bankruptcy in...
He didn't say it. He declared it.
He declared it. Despite that, he supported the abolitionist cause by becoming a conductor on the Underground Railroad and establishing the League of Gileadites in Springfield, Ohio in 1851. So this league was an organization of, as far as we know, because I think they intentionally kept lax records to protect the involved
identities. Yeah. Gileadites also makes me feel very uncomfy having watched Handmaid's Tale.
Well, I mean, the Gileadites took their name from the biblical Mount Gilead, where Gideon led the Israelites to freedom.
Mm-hmm.
So I think in the case of Handmaid's Tale, that was a bunch of propaganda bullshit idea. But now in this context, it's like, no, I'm leading my people.
Mm-hmm.
I'm leading the people to their freedom.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the League of Gileadites in Springfield, Ohio. The League was an organization of, as far as we know, Black Americans, many of whom had been recently enslaved themselves.
Mm-hmm.
There is evidence that there were also white people who were kind of worked as facilitators.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, John Brown was white, so there's that.
Mm-hmm.
This illegal armed network for mutual defense was established to help runaway enslaved people escape to Canada.
Mm-hmm.
It was going to get them all the way up. So they had a whole agreement with rules. They had like a charter, basically, which I think it's interesting that they didn't keep exact records in order to identify like who was part of the Gileadites and who wasn't, but also like a charter with like essentially a little constitution and like a list
like it was very official, but it was also partially anonymous, which like doesn't make sense.
It makes perfect sense. It was incredibly intentional because they knew exactly what they were doing.
Right. It just like those two things don't usually go together.
Exactly.
So it seems so weird. Yeah.
Exactly. But it's just like a really interesting piece of like, I just think it's cool that like, even if you're like not that I'm a historian, but I'm taking my information from historians. Even if you're a historian studying this, looking for this information, it's just not there because they never fucking wrote it down because they didn't want it to be known.
Yeah.
And I don't know, just like history and documentation and books and writings and publications is so important.
It's amazing. And how beautiful is it that intentional anonymity like endures because of the hard work that they did to protect each other. Like that's a pretty fucking incredible thing to think about. That to this day, where it's people's entire jobs where they've studied their whole lives to find information like that, still can't find it. Like, I mean,
they do have quite a bit of information, but there are just some things that are just completely left out.
Know. Yeah.
They're just left off the record. They were hard and true facts at the time, but because they were never recorded or written down anywhere, it's just completely lost to history.
It's kind of beautiful.
I think it's beautiful too.
I love it.
So their slogan was "Union is strength." And by the way, speaking of how foxy John Brown was, if you've got the hots for him, here's a quote from one of his friends, a man named Thomas Thomas.
Okay, TT.
TT was a Black man. He was just one of his associates. I think most of John Brown's associates were Black men. He definitely ingratiated himself with the Black community. So Thomas says, quote, "When he was here, he was smooth-faced and had black, heavy hair brushed straight up from his forehead. He always dressed in plain browns, something like a Quaker. He wasn't tall nor anything of a giant, as some represent, and he wasn't at all fierce or crazy looking. He was medium in height, and he was quiet and agreeable to talk with. He was a gentleman and a Christian." So remember this quote kind of later, because later in life, there was some propaganda and some aggrandizement of him being this like
violent
monster, a reckless zealot, maybe. So I think this quote was probably given, I imagine this quote was given later, and it was sort of like
in response to all this bullshit that's out there about him.
Exactly.
Okay. That's cool.
So as Britannica would describe it, John Brown became obsessed with the idea of taking overt action to help win justice for enslaved Black people. At the age of 55, he moved with his sons to the Kansas territory to assist anti-slavery forces struggling for control in that territory. So again, bloody Kansas. Kansas was a battleground at this point. This time is characterized by things like electoral fraud, raids, violent assaults and murders, both in the Kansas Territory and Missouri, between pro-slavery border ruffians, is what they called themselves, and anti-slavery free staters. We don't know exactly how many political murders were committed during this time, but it's somewhere between 56 and 200.
It was a lot.
Well, and this is pre-Civil War. This is just like uprisings.
Yep.
But
because like you said, that was a key state. It was seen by the Confederacy essentially as a key state to unlocking the North and bringing slavery to the North.
Absolutely.
And so they were literally willing to die fighting
both sides.
For their cause, on both sides.
Yep.
Because they felt like there was so much, because there was so much to lose if the South had won.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, I mean, we'll get to that, but this shit gets so much more intense and dramatic. And like, I don't know. Thinking of myself being put into this situation, it must have been so terrifying, but at the same time, so you'd have to be so brave, but you'd have such a feeling of like honor to fight for this thing that is so much in your face and so like ethically, morally on the line as like, should people be owned or not? And I understand that the context that we think of it today is totally different from how they saw it, because it was part of, chattel slavery is part of their economy. It's part of the culture, for better or worse. But I think that the bravery of these people who stuck up for it and were just like, absolutely not. I'm putting my own life on the line because this is fucking wrong. And there's no amount of rule of law, basically, decorum, precedent that's going to stop me from completely laying it all on the line.
Well, right, because people are dying every day because of it.
Yeah.
It's like, this was...
But this is when white people started laying their lives on the line about it.
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't always like that. This is this is the start. This is right before the Civil War.
Yeah.
Right before. So we have the border ruffians and the free staters. And again, somewhere between 56 and 100. I think the majority of the losses were on the free stater side. But either way, there was a lot of people. There was a lot of bloodshed here. So John Brown and his 5 sons, I believe, settled in the Osawatomie area and soon became the leader of anti-slavery guerrillas in Osawatomie. So in 1856, there was the sacking of the town of Lawrence, Kansas. That's where my friend Ellen's family is from, I think. Aww. Hi, Ellen.
Hi, Ellen.
So they sacked the town of Lawrence. The sacking was done by a mob of slavery sympathizers, so pro-slavery people, in 1856. And also there was an incident on the Senate floor where an abolitionist senator named Charles Sumner was attacked and beaten with a cane by pro-slavery South Carolina Representative Preston Brooks. It almost killed Sumner.
Yeah, this is like some January 6th shit.
Yeah.
Like, that's the shit that they were doing.
He was almost killed on the floor of the Senate. By this fucking old dude with a cane. It was just like, bap, 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 bap.
Yeah.
And it's because Charles Sumner had like a couple days earlier delivered this speech about like, you should be ashamed of yourself. Slavery is bad. Da 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 da. And he was mostly speaking like to or about like the cousin of Preston Brooks.
Okay.
So old man cane using Preston Brooks. Not that using a cane is a bad thing, but it was
but using
his
it as a weapon
murder
is not
weapon.
a great thing. Yeah.
Just try to beat him to death.
Yeah. Right there in front of God in the Senate.
In the chambers.
My God.
So John Brown saw this and the sacking of Lawrence, and he was determined that he had a mission to take vengeance. So on May 24th, 1856, he led a nighttime retaliatory raid on a pro-slavery settlement at Pottawatomie Creek. I think this raid was a little bit of a slow burn. I think it took like a couple days, but there were conflicting reports.
Okay.
So in this raid, Brown and a group of men dragged 5 unarmed men and boys from their homes, pro-slavery men and boys. Not that that makes it like, better necessarily, but that's what, that was the impetus.
It's an uprising. This is what happens.
He brutally murdered them by hacking them to death with swords in front of their families. This incident became known as the Pottawatomie Massacre and was one of several that stirred national controversy over bleeding Kansas and the issue of slavery in the U.S. territories during the mid-1950s.
I'm sure that pro-slavery factions use that, undeniably extreme violence that I'm certainly not condoning, but, then it just gets whipped into additional propaganda and politicized for their cause.
Kind of, but actually in effect, it just ignited a wave of fear among at least local slavery apologists, but they started calling John Brown Old Osawatomie Brown. Osawatomie, sorry. Old Osawatomie Brown. I think that it's like Pottawatomie, Osawatomie. I think it's the same area. But they started, word spread and pro-slavery groups and
we're like, shit, we better knock it off. This guy's gonna fucking come and kill us.
Well, they were like, oh shit, they're gonna stop at nothing to get us. This was a really, really big deal. And an even bigger deal. On October 16th, 1959, so this was, 3 years later, John Brown led a group of followers and attempted to seize the federal armory at Harper's Ferry, then Virginia, now West Virginia, in order to distribute weapons to enslaved people so they could rise up against their slaveholders. He did receive some assistance from Frederick Douglass and Harriet Tubman. So they were all contemporaries, and they were all kind of clued into each other, politically tied. Working together. And this was the main precipitating event to the Civil War. That was the Harper's Ferry issue. So it was, again, a BFD, big fucking deal.
Yeah.
This is from my lover, Encyclopedia Britannica. The raid on Harper's Ferry was intended to be the first stage in an elaborate plan to establish an independent stronghold of freed slaves, his words, not mine, in the mountains of Maryland and Virginia, an enterprise that had won moral and financial support from several prominent Bostonians. Choosing Harper's Ferry because of its arsenal and because of its location as a convenient gateway to the South, because that Harper's Ferry was where a bunch of railways and river routes came through.
Okay.
So it was on the Atlantic too. Sorry. John Brown and his band of 16 white people and 5 black people seized the armory on the night of October 16th. Sporadic fighting took place around the arsenal for 2 days, and on October 18th, combined state and federal troops, the latter commanded by Colonel Robert E. Lee, subdued John Brown and his collaborators. 17 men died in the fighting.
Damn.
So something that I read too is that John Brown had expected to arrive in Harper's Ferry and the surrounding area, spread the word of the impending uprising to enslaved people in that area and give them weapons and be meet us at 6 o'clock on this date at this place, and we're gonna overthrow everything. But the people in that area were not inclined to just blindly follow this white guy they had never heard of before.
Fair.
So the support that he had anticipated never really materialized, and that's basically why this whole plot fell through. Which was, I mean, that was not really preventable. Like, how could you really make yourself known or popularize yourself in advance? You're just kind of showing up and being like, hey guys, here's a gun. Meet me here. We're gonna free you.
Yeah, and that element of surprise is so,
Like, I have a family. I'll probably get killed. No. You know? Yeah, and because of the element of surprise, there was no time to really communicate with these groups beforehand. So 17 men out of 21 died. They captured the rest of them. The subsequent trial of John Brown and his men for murder, inciting slave rebellion, and treason was widely reported in the national press. His speech upon conviction was printed in 50 newspapers, including on the front page of the New York Times.
Wow.
And John Brown's speech, in this speech, he proclaimed, quote, "If it is deemed necessary that I should forfeit my life for the furtherance of the ends of justice and mingle my blood further with the blood of my children and with the blood of millions in this slave country whose rights are disregarded by wicked, cruel, and unjust enactments, I submit. So let it be done."
Damn.
So John Brown was hanged on December 2nd, 1859. And there was a story that he, like, on his way to the gallows, he, like, paused to kiss a black infant on his way up the steps.
Yeah.
This was first circulated by Brown's friend and supporter, journalist James Redpath, in an autobiography published just months after the execution in order to raise money for his widow and his children. So I don't think it was true. But, you know, it
can't be, like, verified, but
it paints a picture. It definitely cements his, like, status as a martyr. And if he was trying to raise money for his widow and children, like, yeah, fucking whatever. I mean, in essence, like, it's an overwrought sort of visual,
right,
from my point of view right now. But if it helped, I mean, it was effectively like the sentiment that he was trying to convey.
Yeah, I think we're also looking at it through a pretty modern lens. Like,
totally.
I don't think he could have. I think he would have hoped that he would use every last, even his dying breath, to spread the message of this work.
Yeah.
But I don't even know if he would have known, like, oh, this could be on the cover of the New York Times, so I better kiss this baby. I could see it being a genuine, like, well, you know, I did the best I could. That would be my hope. Like, parting moment.
It might have also been, like, kind of meant, like, more, like, allegorically, because obviously we're talking about, like, 1959? Yeah, 1959. So it's not like there were photographs. It might have just been a story.
1859?
So, yes, 1859.
I was like, this did not happen in 1959.
It was almost the 60s.
Yeah.
But there were no photographs. It's just stories and rumors and, like, whatever. And it almost doesn't matter.
Right.
So although the raid on Harper's Ferry was denounced by a majority of Northerners, probably just because it was, like, violent and also didn't work to the ends that it was intended to, it electrified the South, which was already fearful of slave rebellions, and convinced slaveholders that abolitionists, like I said before, would stop at nothing to eradicate slavery. It fucking freaked them out. It also made a fucking martyr of John Brown,
right,
and for his anti-slavery cause.
So that, like, you know, that work would continue with probably even more
babe,
support.
And it so did. So when he learned that John Brown had been executed, Henry David Thoreau, who is, if you're not familiar, an essayist, a philosopher, and a staunch abolitionist, he said, quote, "I heard, to be sure, that he had been hanged, but I did not know what that meant, and not after any number of days shall I believe it. Of all the men who are said to be my contemporaries, it seems to me that John Brown is the only one who has not died." So, like, his spirit, his everything just, like, lives on. So John Brown's death and subsequent infamy brought about the popular Civil War era marching song, John Brown's Body, which I know I sang during West Virginia crimes.
You sure did.
Which was John Brown's body lies a moldering in the grave. Da, 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 da. Glory, glory, hallelujah. So the original song is called John Brown's Song. And the lyrics are like, his truth
is
marching on, meaning John Brown's truth.
Damn, I had no idea. Well, I didn't know the full context when you went over this, because you didn't go this deep into it when we did West Virginia crimes, but this is fascinating.
So Frederick Douglass had to flee to Europe after this in order to escape retribution for his knowledge of the Harper's Ferry plot. But he later gave a speech praising him, saying that, quote, if John Brown did not end the war that ended slavery, he did at least begin the war that started slavery.
That ended slavery.
Begin the war that ended slavery.
Yeah.
Is that what I said?
No,
obviously
you said begin the war that started slavery.
Oh, God. Anyway.
Amazing.
I don't know. Even though I fucked up that quote, I like it. Because he definitely began the war that ended slavery.
Yeah.
During the Jim Crow era, when mainstream American memory of the Civil War downplayed the importance of emancipation, many white historians portrayed John Brown as a zealot and a madman. So as I kind of alluded to earlier, although Black intellectuals and artists like W.E.B. Du Bois and Jacob Lawrence portrayed him sympathetically. Controversy over John Brown's actions and whether it's acceptable to use violence to challenge social injustice remains with us today. So we do still have the Potawatomi issue, and they, I'm sure those weren't the only people he killed in, I don't know if you can even call it cold blood, but he murdered people. Yeah, it just goes back to the question of violence when it comes to civil justice and all that kind of stuff. So John Brown, that's John Brown.
Wow. Thank you for going deeper into him, because in Whistleblower, we did not get to all of this, obviously.
And I didn't really get that much into his personal life. These are just like more of his like more politically charged.
No, but those two that now we've both talked about were contemporaries and did work together. The guy I covered was considerably younger, but yeah, their paths crossed a lot. And some of the folks that were working with this kid that I talked about had tried to save John Brown from the jail where he was being held before he was executed.
Yeah.
And he said, no, I'm going to stay and see this through, probably to have that last platform to make a statement on his way out and like show that he committed to this work until his dying breath, and that time was now. I just thought that was like,
that's what I'm saying about like the courage that these individuals had at this time, when this shit was on the line at that moment, and to just put your corporeal body out there, and be like, run me over, history.
That's what it takes, baby.
I'm here. This is where I will die.
It's hardcore.
Yeah, it's really hardcore. So Kansas entered the Union as a free state in 1861, which was when the Civil War began. During the war, Kansas suffered the highest rate of casualties in proportion to its population of any state in the Union, with nearly 8,500 people dead or wounded.
So shocking, considering how much lower the population would have been at that time, too. And, like, that's already a huge amount of people.
The number itself doesn't seem that high, but when you think about how many people lived in the U.S., how many people fought in the Civil War, that's bad.
Yeah, that's a lot of fucking. I mean, that's almost 10,000 people.
But
that's a lot of fucking people.
Yeah, and all the families affected, because I'm sure the vast majority of these people were men.
Yeah, men and boys.
Yeah, and a lot of whom had families and everything. By the 1890s, most of the land was occupied, and Kansans settled into a life dominated by agriculture. World War I produced a great demand for food, which led to prairie being plowed, overplowed, and put into production, leading to temporary prosperity, but also contributing directly to the dust storms of the 1930s. Because
agriculture is such a dom, and she hates being overplowed.
I mean, when there's that much money to be made as there was during World War I, these people were going to work their land till it can't be worked anymore.
Yep.
And that's why the Dust Bowl came about. Was them just like fucking punishing the soil till it could give no more.
Yeah.
In 1954, the landmark Brown versus Board of Education of Topeka, because I feel like the Topeka part gets kind of left out in a lot of places, in a lot of ways we refer to Brown versus Board of Education. This case was decided in the Supreme Court, ending the doctrine of separate but equal in public schools. On May 4th, 1987, Monroe Elementary School and Sumner Elementary School achieved National Historic Landmark designations for their significance to the Supreme Court case. On October 26, 1992, President George H.W. Bush signed the Brown versus Board of Education National Historic Site Act of 92, establishing Monroe as a national park. And I looked this up. It's not like a literal park. There's a park around it, I think, but it's basically a museum. They turned the school into a museum.
Cool.
Unfortunately, as of May 20th, 2008, Sumner Elementary has been one of the 11 most endangered historic places in America by the National Trust for Historic Preservation. But I looked at the website earlier today. It looks like it's okay. But basically, they're both museums about Brown versus Board stuff. Kansas is also recognized from the 1939 Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer film, The Wizard of Oz.
Oh, we're not in Kansas anymore.
Yes, the famous Dorothy line, Toto, I have a feeling we're not in Kansas anymore.
And you were there. And you.
And you were there. And Uncle Tommy was there, whatever his name was.
I don't fucking know their names. Scarecrow? I don't know.
Well, her uncles were like the Scarecrow and the Tin Man, but she said like their names.
Yeah.
And you were there? And you?
I can't.
I used to watch that movie all the time.
I know.
The film.
You loved that movie.
I really did. Oh my God. Do I have to watch the debates? I want to watch Wizard of Oz now.
You definitely don't have to watch the debates.
I'm going to,
They're
though.
Gonna be trash.
As we're recording this, it is the night of the debates. Also, the night that The Bear came out on Hulu. Oh my God.
Yeah,
I have so much to watch.
I'm choosing.
Women
I'm
choose
always
the bear.
choosing the bear.
Oh no!
Yeah, don't think that wasn't intentional.
Have other people made this joke today?
Oh no,
probably.
We're not
be the only
one.
Not
that clever. We're not that clever.
Oh my God, the man or the bear? The bear, but
choosing
also
the bear.
Choosing the debates because. The last time I watched the debate was the night of the fly on Mike Pence's head, and I thought I was having a hallucination.
I was hammered and like
so
live
funny.
tweeting the entire thing.
So good.
We were balls deep in the pandemic. No one had left their homes.
No. Mike Pence, I watched the J6
that fly
shit
saved America.
live. Man, I love a live historical moment.
I know. January 6th was crazy. We were texting each other like fiends.
Dude, it was like 11 a.m. and I was like, are y'all watching CNN? And
y'all
half of you were like, why the fuck would I be watching CNN? Like, I'm at work. Anyway. Wizard of Oz. The film script was adapted from L. Frank Baum's book with lyrics by E.Y. Harburg and a score by Harold Arlen.
Okay.
In the film, Kansas and the Great Plains in general epitomized the drab and ordinary.
Okay, I thought you were just going to give the whole synopsis of The Wizard of Oz. Okay. Continue.
In the film, Dorothy enters stage fright. Well,
opening scene, Dust Bowl, Kansas.
Also, like, it's the fucking Wizard of Oz, so all of the scenes in actual Kansas are in fucking sepia tone, and all of the Oz scenes are in, like, full color.
Well, and that was intentional because Technicolor had like just become a thing, especially in people's homes.
Mm-hmm.
And they wanted that spectacle of when she lands in Oz, and people weren't expecting color.
Oh yeah,
on their screens, and they like lost their fucking minds.
But like literarily speaking,
it was perfect.
It was also like, well, I'll kind of get to it a little bit. Okay, so drab and ordinary, Oz is magical. The film actually assigned a much bigger role to Kansas and its people, with the book itself only dedicating 6 pages to it in the first chapter and fewer than 20 lines in the final chapter.
Wow.
However, both in the book and the film, the stark difference between Kansas and Oz have always been a defining feature that suggests that, like America, Oz is more than it seems. Because she's happy in Kansas. She's happy when she comes home. It doesn't matter that it's sepia tone.
Yeah. That's sweet.
In the film, no actual town name is given. And therefore, Kansans jumped at the opportunity and stated that Dorothy was from liberal Kansas. So this is the story. Max Zimmerman, an insurance agent from the town of Liberal, attended a conference in 1978. When he entered the convention, a waiter noticed that his name tag said he was from Kansas. Like Dorothy. So Max asked the waiter, "What would you expect to see in Kansas?" The waiter replied, "Dorothy's house, of course." So this made Max wonder, well, where was her hometown? And when he found out that she had no official hometown, he thought, why not Liberal?
Why not?
Why not claim this to get some extra tourism dollars? A resident of Liberal, Kansas donated a 1907 house that resembled the house in the story.
Perfect.
In 1981, the house was moved to the grounds of the Seward County Coronado Museum. It was transformed into an exact replica of the house shown in the movie and recognized by Governor John Carlin as Dorothy's official home.
Incredible.
So that's where
every other town
Dorothy
in Kansas
came from.
Is
completely
just
invented. Oh my
god!
God.
For not jumping on that sooner. Like, damn liberals.
It's I wonder if people from Liberal, Kansas are just called liberals.
Liberals. They took our Dorothy, those damn liberals.
Well, you didn't jump on it fast enough. The fucking movie came out in like the fucking 50s. You had 30 years to figure it out.
Yeah, I'm shocked that this guy was the first to think of that.
Oh, God. Anyway.
Upsetting.
Moving on to the state flag.
Yes.
'Cause I'm a flag hag. It was adopted on March 23rd, 1927. It shows the state seal without the inscriptions on its outer rim and the sunflower emblem above it. Both are above the state's name, which appears in a beautiful sans serif bold golden lettering at the bottom. The state seal has the state motto and highlights the importance of agriculture in the state. So if you're not looking at this photo,
the flag is adorable.
It's one of the more attractive, but I do want to point out that there is a white person like plowing with 2 horses.
Yep.
And then a line of like covered wagons drawn by oxen in the mid background. And then in the far background, we have some obvious native people chasing some buffalo across a prairie.
Okay. Yep.
And then some mountains and a sunset and some stars and the ad astra per aspera thing. So I just, like, I understand. I can't even
This is
say
why
that.
we update flags.
This is exactly why we update flags.
This is just,
I can see why this would be the original flag. I appreciate the sunflower. I appreciate the Kansas because
but
it's
this
very
is a problematic
obvious
depiction.
It's just like, do we really need to latch on to this very narrow window of time where this was like a realistic scene? Like, can we evolve, please? Anyway, I
hear
prefer their banner, which is just a field of navy blue and just a fucking sunflower in the middle. That's it.
Yeah.
Because to me, that says Kansas. Because I
beautiful.
recognize the sunflower as a Kansas thing. Mm-hmm. I mean, ideally, we'd have a western meadowlark in the middle of a blue silk field.
For Iowa?
No, for Kansas.
Oh, right.
The western meadowlark. Fucking keep
Right.
up.
The little yellow bird. Sorry. I'm sorry, Mom.
So there's agriculture. We get it. But we could be a little bit cuter and a little more modern and a little bit less offensive about it. I'm just saying.
Yep.
Okay, so closing us out with some fun facts about Kansas. It is the leading producer of wheat in the U.S. Sumner County is called, quote, the wheat capital of the world and produced
the wheat capital of the world.
The wheat capital of the world and produced 9 million bushels in 2009.
Oh.
I don't know how much a bushel is.
But I know that I love you, a bushel and a peck.
What's a peck?
But
it's like $1.50.
It's a song from
A Bushel and a Peck. I know that it's a song. So Jayhawks and Jayhawker were originally used to describe the raiders and looters during the period of unrest after the Kansas-Nebraska Act of 1854. I believe that they were like the anti-slavery, the raiders and the looters, the what is it called, the free staters.
Yep.
They were later used solely as a label for free state proponents and eventually became associated with all Kansans. So we can be proud of the name Jayhawkers.
Yep.
Helium was discovered in 1905 at the University of Kansas, but I have to clarify that helium was actually discovered by like a fucking astronomer, like a French astronomer in India in the 1800s. So more specifically, helium was discovered to be abundant on the planet Earth as opposed to just mostly abundant on the sun. So this readily available helium product, which was primarily found on the Great Plains, like came from natural gas derived on the Great Plains, proved to be an asset during World War II for the U.S. for like military blimps.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, Kansas.
Okay. And last but not least, in Topeka, singing the alphabet on the streets at night is illegal.
Whoa.
So be careful.
I will. Wow.
So that's a little bit of info about the lovely state of Kansas.
Shocking. Fascinating. Helium mating. Well done.
John Brownie.
Nating. I love it.
Great.
Great job, Ma.
Thank you. I hope you learned a little something.
Are you ready for my case?
Sure am.
All right. I'm not, but here we go. We got to go back to 1982 for this one.
Oh, good.
Not 1882, 1982.
Thank you for clarifying, because my mind was still kind of in the 19th century.
Yep. Tom and Sandy Bird and their children, who were 2, 3, and 5 years old, left Arkansas and headed for Kansas in order to form a new congregation for a Lutheran church that, like, Tom would run.
Okay.
Tom Bird was the son of a minister and had master's degrees in sacred theology and divinity. He was a long-distance runner in college and still ran more than 5 miles every day. That will become applicable later, slightly.
Honestly, he sounds like a minister.
Yeah. He had a passion for athletics, was known for being competitive, and his wife Sandra was described as an energetic woman with short brown hair. She had a master's degree in mathematics and taught at Emporia State University while working on her master's in computer math. So frankly, why this impressive math whiz? I mean, it was the 80s. They probably had all kinds. That was probably what coding was.
Coding.
Computer math. But like, why this incredibly impressive and intelligent woman was attracted to like a master's level theologian in like Bible studies is beyond me, but alas, opposites attract. Then we have, so that's the Birds. Then we have the Andersons. Marty Anderson worked in the laboratory at Newman Hospital as like a lab tech. Lorna worked part-time for the Heart Association, Lorna Anderson. And later, she also worked part-time at the church that Tom ran as the church secretary / Tom Bird's secretary.
Okay.
And Marty and Lorna had 4 daughters, aged 8 and 4, and then 2-year-old twins.
Okay. So they all had a bunch of young kids.
They're
kind of working together near each other.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
It kind of opens up feeling a little bit like Candy.
That's what I thought. That was my first thought.
That's the vibe.
Okay.
Definitely the vibe.
Okay. Thank you for acknowledging that.
Yep. Apparently, the Andersons' marriage was rocky. Lorna said that at one point she had even drawn up divorce papers, but that Marty had talked her out of it. She told people that Marty was rough with both her and the children. And in 1982, Lorna asked a friend if she knew anyone who would kill her husband.
Well, this is the problem with the lack of no-fault divorces.
Yeah.
Listen to a whole thing about that on the radio today.
Uh-huh. Yeah. So that friend took it as a joke because, like, honestly, I would also take it as a joke. But, like, after this, maybe I won't.
Babe, if I ever ask you to kill my husband,
it's for real.
I'm not joking.
All right. Done. The Birds and the Andersons met at a church softball game and would later transfer their church membership to Faith Lutheran, which was Tom's church, so that, like, the whole Anderson family is now part of Tom's church.
Great.
So I'm sure you have no idea where all this is headed.
Nope.
An affair. Lorna had had a string of extramarital affairs while married to Marty. Like, this woman's little black book was the white pages.
Were all of her kids Marty's?
As far as we know, yes.
Okay.
I'm honestly impressed because, like, who has the fucking time for multiple affairs when you have 4 kids under, like, 8?
That's my fucking question.
It's exhausting. Exhausting. So when Reverend Tom caught her eye, she was, like, down to clown because it wasn't her first rodeo.
Okay.
So in January of 1983 is when Lorna began working part-time as the church secretary under Tom Bird. January 27th, 1983, a woman named Jan Mead, who was a work friend from the Heart Association, a work friend of Lorna's, and Lorna Anderson's, Jan and Lorna, went together for an after-work cocktail, a little happy hour. There, Lorna confided in Jan about her affair with Tom and her overall unhappy marriage. February of 1983, this friend, Jan, learned that Lorna worked part-time at the church and that she took the job just to be close to Tom, with Lorna saying, quote, "Tom and I are seeing each other, and this is one chance that we have to be alone, and I enjoy working there. And also, I really like it.
Well,
Don't make me quit."
I know why you really like it.
Yep. March of 1983, Jan stated that Lorna and Tom were already deeply in their affair, as she had heard about it as early as January, and that Lorna would use her part-time work with Jan at the Heart Association as cover for the affair. So according to Jan, Lorna would call her and say things like, quote, "I've told my husband I'm going to meet with you in Wichita. And if he calls, would you tell him that I'm on my way to or from to meet with you?"
No, that is not fair.
No, it's not.
That's not fair to do to a friend.
No.
Especially if that friend is close with, like, your family, your husband, your kids, all that stuff. That's fucked up.
But no matter what, it's fucked up, and it's not fucked up, and it doesn't make your friend a bad friend if that friend says, "No, I'm not going to do that."
Correct.
Get your house in order.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
The pair would also sneak away to nearby small towns so they could walk the streets holding hands without being discovered and spend some time in their hotel rooms.
Yeah, obviously.
Railing each other. Also in March, Lorna said to Jan, quote, "He's pretty good in bed for a minister."
Oh.
Hated it. Hate everything about this.
Christ. That's a problem with Lutherans.
Back off.
Could be a minister and like a married minister. I don't know.
Oh, the problem with Lutherans is they're lax about the celibacy thing.
Yeah.
For members. Okay. Well, whatever.
I grew up with Catholicism, and I know that is extraordinarily problematic, and I was mostly saying this facetiously.
Yeah, because, you know, the alternative, I'd rather you have an affair with a consenting adult.
It always catches me off guard when I hear about a religious leader being married and having sex with anyone, like, justifiably, because that's, like, not even what I...
Yeah, that's not how you were raised.
It's not even how I think.
With your church, yeah. Whatever.
I don't know. It's fucking...
Either way.
It's problematic all around.
All of it's crap. So, by spring of 1983, the affair was in full force. Lorna, who, quote, had a real problem not feeling good about myself, I wonder why, sought Tom's shoulder to cry on, saying Tom was very supportive, very encouraging. Tom Bird was also unhappy in his marriage. Oh, this is the way to deal with it. These fucking people, I can't with this. And this was a point of bonding for him and Lorna. He claimed the marriage was strained by the demands of 2 careers and 3 young children. Bird was frustrated by his wife's impressive mathematics job, her friend said, and according to Lorna, quote, what he wanted was someone who considered being a pastor's wife a full-time job. Because, like, fuck your wife's goals and accomplishments, I guess.
What?
Yep.
Being a pastor's wife specifically.
Yep.
Cool.
Sandy even later stated, quote, he told me that I was not what he needed in a wife, but that he could make me into what he needed. Yeah. This guy's a piece of shit. He and Lorna fucking deserve each other. Mm-hmm. So Tom and Lorna would start exchanging love letters that Lorna would keep in the bottom of her lingerie drawer. I mean, what are we, 15? Tom would claim that these letters from him to Lorna were innocent, only expressing a Christian love for Lorna. But I'll let you be the judge of that. Here are some lines.
Yes!
The cover of one of the cards read, miss you, miss you, miss you. Everything I do echoes with the laughter and the voice of you.
Ew.
One began, I love you, and I'm confident in the future, and that makes the present okay. And it was signed, love you always, Tom. And another line read, you are so very special. I love you so very much, and that's forever, Tom. What a Christian love.
Honestly, if you're gonna go over the line that much, at least make it fucking hot, good.
Yeah.
Worth
decent.
Keeping.
Yeah.
Why'd this bitch keep this anyway?
I don't know.
It's pathetic.
Pathetic. I can't. Sorry, I had to burp. Okay. Sandy was aware that her husband was pulling away, and she was worried about her marriage to Tom. Like, she knew something was up. Sandy had visibly lost weight. She was depressed. She was having trouble sleeping, and she was constantly worrying about her marriage, telling her friend, quote, I'm afraid he doesn't love me anymore. Just breaks my heart. When she complained about how much time Tom spent with Lorna, he would tell her that he was counseling her about her unhappy marriage and called Sandy cold for not caring about Lorna as she's going through this hard time. Yeah, I fucking hate this guy. At a church conference with 2 other couples, the Boysons and the Smiths, where like the 3 husbands, Tom and these 2 other husbands were pastors, and then the other 3 on the trip were the pastor's wives, so Sandy and these 2 women.
The locker room talk.
Yeah, exactly. And I guess the wives get to go on the trip because that's a full-time job, according to Tom Bird.
It's a write-off.
Yeah. But on this trip, the wives, they don't have to fucking write things off. The church doesn't pay taxes.
Oh, I guess I didn't mean write off. I meant like the church probably paid for the whole fucking trip.
Oh, they absolutely did. But the wives, I guess, had some alone time, and Sandy took this opportunity to open up to them, crying because Tom was spending too much time with the church secretary, Lorna. She told the wives, Carolyn and Pat, about a time when a preschool teacher, who was not Lorna, even though she did used to be a teacher, in Tom Bird's church told her she used to wish Sandy would die in a car wreck so that she could have Pastor Bird.
What?
So I guess, like, people were hot for him. I don't know. I don't understand the appeal of this guy. But also, like, when who looks at somebody that they ran into at the church and tells them that they wish that they would die so that she could like rail her husband. So like, what is all of this is so unhinged. I don't even like know what's real.
I know. I can't really. I'm barely keeping up, I'll be honest.
Fair enough, but this is happening whether we like it or not.
Okay.
So basically, people were hot for Tom, and like Sandy always felt uncomfortable with this, and now Tom's pulling away, and she's like hearing about Lorna, and she's trying to talk to the wives about this, and we don't know exactly what happened in that conversation, but I think that they were encouraging her to continue on and stay with her husband.
Hold on. Tom Bird is the
pastor.
Okay, I'm looking at the pictures on the drive.
Yeah, honey. He's not a prize. He looks like a howdy doody puppet.
He really does.
Yeah, if you painted freckles on that motherfucker, the corporate wants you to find the difference between these two pictures.
Oh, but like his eyebrow, I don't know. The whole
he sucks.
He sucks. He sucks every which way.
Yep.
Okay, I just want to make sure I'm looking at the right person.
Yep. Tom Bird.
Okay.
So Tom and Lorna are having sex with each other. Sandy and Marty are Tom and Lorna's successive spouses.
Yeah. Okay.
That's really all you need to know.
I got it.
By the end of the conference, Sandy seemed to have found hope or peace or whatever, or giving Pastor Smith a note stating that things were better with Tom. She had hope for the future. And she told her mother that she had been talking to about some of these issues, that her life was right with God and that it was up to Tom to get his life right with God. But like, spoiler alert, he didn't.
Weird.
So in April of 1983, Lorna and Martin took out a new life insurance policy, which isn't super unusual in and of itself. Marty was like a dude who believed in having life insurance, and I think that it wasn't an irregular practice every few years for them to buy term life insurance to just have it as they were getting older. But it did mean that Lorna was very much aware of this new policy, and the timing is either whether this was like triggered by the fact that Marty was like, "Oh, hey, we got this offer for more term life insurance. We should take it." Or if Lorna was like, "Oh, hey, we should look into more life insurance," and then concocted this plan. I'm not sure. I don't know if we'll ever know, but it kind of seems calculated on Lorna's part.
Okay.
So April 19th,
it could be completely innocuous, though.
It could be completely innocuous. It could be a coincidence. She certainly references the policy in the next part of this story, so it's not like she wasn't aware of it. Whether it was her idea or not, we don't know.
Got it.
Doesn't really matter.
Okay.
April 19th, 1983. So Jan, Lorna's work friend, who she had like told about the affair and put in a terrible position, being like, "Cover for me while I rail this priest," stated that Lorna said that sometimes she wished something would happen to Marty and also to Sandy, so her husband and Tom's wife, so that she and Tom could just be together. Jan later testified that Lorna said, quote, "I know this sounds really awful, but sometimes I just wish something would happen to Marty and his wife, Tom's wife, so Tom and I could spend the rest of our lives together." She also said that things were getting worse between her and Marty and that she was getting more involved with Tom. So, a babysitter for the Andersons named Esther Aldrete on April 23rd stated that she overheard Lorna on the phone while she was watching the children one evening. She testified, hearing that Lorna said on the phone, quote, "I cannot wait for Marty to die. I wanted to count his green money or green stuff. I cannot wait for Marty to die. I can't wait to count the green stuff."
I mean, honestly, if I had a nickel for every time I said
you
that
called
about
me
Corey,
and said these words, "I cannot wait for
like
Corey to die. I want to count the green stuff.
I want to count the green stuff."
Yeah, that quote is incredible. I want to count the green stuff. So in May of 1983, we get a couple new characters to this cast, okay? But that's just don't worry about it.
Okay.
Enter Daryl Carter and his brother, Dan. Daryl and Dan had both been affair partners of Lorna in the past.
Lorna.
Not at the same time. I don't know if there was crossover, but they both.
Man.
Lorna railed both Daryl and Dan.
You ever fucked brothers?
No.
Me neither.
Well,
I don't think I know any brothers. Well, like my cousins. That doesn't count.
I mean, my two brothers-in-law would pretty much be my only opportunity, and that's never gonna happen.
Oh yeah, my husband's brothers.
Yeah, that would be the easiest
There've
way to
been
do
no
it.
brothers that have been like
Right.
available for me to cross contaminate. You know what I mean?
Correct. Yeah, no, I have not fucked brothers, but
That'd be weird.
life is long. Who knows? Anyway,
yeah.
So Lorna, in May of 1983, approaches Daryl asking him to meet her at Faith Lutheran Church in Emporia. She did not tell him what the meeting was going to be about. According to Daryl, he, Lorna, and Tom in Tom's office sat down, a trio, and discussed plans to kill Marty Anderson at that meeting. Daryl asked why murder instead of counseling or divorce. Thank you fucking Daryl. Saying, quote, Tom, you're the minister here at the church. Have you ever, talked to Lorna about counseling and why, don't you talk to her about getting a divorce? That would be a lot easier thing to do. Justice for Daryl.
Yes, Daryl.
Despite Daryl's best efforts at reason, the pair replied that they wanted Martin's life insurance payout and that the two of them were in love and wanted to be together.
It is about the love.
It's about the love, but also the money. They said, quote, Lorna didn't want a divorce, that Martin Anderson had a large insurance policy, around $370,000, and that she didn't want the divorce, that she wanted the money, and the only way they could get the money was if Martin Anderson was dead. Thanks, Daryl. Thomas Bird also said he planned to preside over the funeral so he could be close to Lorna, and that because he was a minister, nobody would suspect him. Lorna also asked him to be a pallbearer. These people are sick.
No.
Trash.
Also, so fucking clueless.
Yeah.
No,
Sick, trash, I can't.
Yeah.
Daryl then asked why they thought he would participate in this plan when he'd never done anything like this and he was not a cold-blooded killer. And Daryl replied, I haven't either. I'm a man of God and I'm going to kill Martin Anderson. Oh, no. Daryl said that Tom looked at Daryl and was like, well, I haven't either. And I am a man of God, and I'm willing to kill Martin Anderson. So, why don't you do it too?
What?
Help me do it. So,
come on.
Reluctantly and with the promise of money, Daryl initially agreed to assist.
With the promise
he doesn't,
of money.
But at first he's like, I do kind of need the money. So It continues like this. Here's the plan. When Lorna and Tom recruited Daryl to kill Lorna's husband, Marty, two different plans were outlined. Plan number one, a staged car accident. Tom Bird mentioned that he had been, that he had been out on a gravel road where there was a bridge over the Cottonwood River, and it was about 50 feet down to the river. Bird suggested that if a person was drugged or drunk, that person could easily miss the curve in the road, and he suggested that they drug Marty at home, take him down to the river, shove his car into the river, and make it look like an accident. Lorna and Tom wanted Daryl to go down to the river to pick up Tom Bird and bring him back to town, as Lorna would be at home establishing an alibi. And we'd want to so they were basically going to have Daryl be like the getaway driver in plan number one.
Yeah.
Plan number two, stage a robbery. Staging a false robbery and shooting Marty in a Topeka house where he stayed while attending his monthly Army Reserve meetings. He was in the ROTC or something like that. Daryl stated that after hearing these plans, he was concerned for his own safety. So instead of giving them a definitive answer, he was like, I need to think about this. I don't want to do a staged
He was like,
robbery.
oh my God, you're going to do it anyway.
Yeah,
if I agree to anything.
This is bad. Tom told Daryl that if anybody asked, the meeting they were having was not about killing Martin.
No,
it was just them. It was just them discussing the possibility.
It's not about killing Martin.
That's not what this meeting was about. It was just about them discussing the possibility of the church's youth group selling fireworks at Daryl Carter's annual fireworks
It's just
stand.
the fireworks, babe.
That's all this was about, officer. Ask Daryl. When approached by Tom a few days later asking if he had made up his mind, Daryl said that he hadn't made up his mind yet, but later telephoned Tom telling him that he would not help. So, good job, Daryl. Bye-bye. Daryl's like, y'all are messy. That money's not worth it.
But also, neither of these plans are very good at all. And if these
they're not.
If these are your best shots, I'd be out too. Good, Daryl. Yeah. Good for you, Daryl.
So Daryl's out, but they were going to go through with their plans with or without Daryl's help, as we know.
Okay.
So July 16th, 1983. This is the evening according to Tom Bird. So it's probably not cold, hard truth. Well, we know this isn't cold, hard truth. This is what he says happened that night.
Okay.
Sandy had been promoted at work, so Tom and Sandy went out to dinner and drinks to celebrate. Early in the evening, Sandy brought hamburgers to the church and they ate dinner. So they went and got food, went to the church to eat. I guess this was their celebration. Kill me now. Sandy changed her clothes at the church and then they went out to a movie. After the movie, they went by the house, their house. Sandy picked up half a bottle of pink champagne, cold duck pink champagne, for herself and a bottle of bourbon for Tom at approximately 9:30 p.m. She told the babysitter, like, hey, I'm just home to change and grab this stuff. We're actually still going to go have a nightcap, but we'll be back around 10:30, which makes the rest of Tom Bird's account very sus. Then Sandy and Tom, with their cocktails in hand, go back to the church. They fix a drink, and afterward, they go to a private club where they each have 2 more drinks. However, autopsy results that we'll get to later only found trace amounts of alcohol in Sandy's system. So if this is how this had gone down, she wasn't drinking very much. They left the club at about 10:45 and went back to the church where Sandy dropped off Tom because he wanted to work on his sermon. He's like, I'm just going to stay here for a little while, work on my sermon. Sandy went to her office at Emporia State University to do some work of her own, I guess, at 10:45 p.m., or that's what she told Tom she was going to do.
Okay, and that's when you do church work or heart work or whatever.
Yeah, she's like doing computer math or some shit, and he's doing church work. And the plan was Sandy was like, okay, you want to work on your sermon? I'm going to go do something at the office. I'll be back in like 45 minutes. So Tom claims that between 11:15 and 11:45, he went jogging for approximately 2.6 miles and then returned to the church expecting Sandy to be back because she said she'd only be gone 45 minutes, but she wasn't back yet.
Okay, and he's jogging because he's a jogger, like you mentioned earlier. But also it's like it's the middle of the fucking night.
What are you doing? What are you doing? Okay. So Sandy, like she said, had said she'd only be gone 45 minutes, but she just didn't come back. He like waited for a while and she didn't come back. There was testimony that Bird didn't call their house after his wife didn't return. He called the Emporia State University where she worked and the Lyon County Sheriff's Department and the Highway Patrol, but did not call home to like check with the babysitter and see if she'd come back. When Sandy didn't return by midnight, Tom drove by the university, but Sandy wasn't there. Then Tom finally made telephone calls to the babysitter, personnel at the university, the Emporia Police Department, and the sheriff's office, and the Newman Hospital looking for her everywhere. However, during the first autopsy of Sandy's body, because Sandy is deceased, we just haven't gotten to that point yet, the food found in her stomach, the food found in her stomach made him determine that she had died within 3 hours of their last meal. So if Tom had said they ate dinner around 7 at the church, then her time of death would be before 10 p.m. And they were together at that time, even by his own testimony. So he's clearly not telling the truth about what happened. And like, that would be obvious just reading this. Who goes out for a date and goes drinking and then goes to work at 10:45 p.m.? Nobody does that. That didn't happen. But like, even if that was under question,
of these fucking people.
Yeah, the doctor's like, well, she died by around 10 p.m. So like, how do you account for that?
Right.
So on July 17th, 1983, her body was found. Sandy's body was found below the Rocky Forge Bridge. So they went with plan 1, car accident, south of the city
Stupidest plan.
south of the city of Emporia on a remote gravel road. She was lying face down in a river in front of her overturned white car. Initial investigation at the scene showed that there was no evidence or skid marks to indicate that the car was out of control or that it made any kind of braking or sliding action before going down the embankment. Police found blood on the bridge and on a tree 20 feet from where her car was. The blood was type A, which matched Sandra's. There was no explanation of how her blood could have been found on the west side of the tree if Sandra had been ejected from her car as it traveled east of the tree. Her wristwatch was found under the bridge near the tree with the blood on it, about 75 yards away from her body. Her body was found lying face down in the water in front of her car, and prosecuting witnesses felt that her position relative to that of her car was not consistent with what the scene had been staged to look like, of her being thrown out of a moving vehicle when the driver's door was torn off.
I think we have to do an episode on accident reconstruction.
Yes, I would love that. It's fascinating.
It is so... It to me, it's on the same level of arson investigation. Mm-hmm. It's or like fire investigation. It's like, how the fuck, like, where do you
know
start?
what did this?
Where the fuck do you start? It's so technical and so
detail-oriented.
Fascinating. Oh my God.
It's incredible.
It's like baking versus cooking.
Yeah, we got to do that. That's a great idea.
I'm adding it to the chart.
Witnesses also testified that, like, this Sandy being thrown from the car thing didn't make sense because she always wore a seatbelt.
Oh.
There was also no blood inside the car when there should have been if she had been banged around during an accident and then thrown from the vehicle.
Yeah.
No blood in the car.
Your ejection is like the last resort.
Yep. So Dr. Gabriel had performed the autopsy. He determined that Sandy had died as the result of an automobile accident when the car missed the bridge and proceeded down the embankment into the river. So ruled it as an accident. Her most serious injury was a transected kidney, which he stated was consistent with a motor vehicle accident. He concluded cause of death was loss of blood due to internal injuries caused by blood force trauma. He judged that her death occurred 30 minutes to an hour after those injuries. There was no explanation why there was no water found in her lungs, even though she had been found face down underwater in the river. Sandy's death would be attributed to as a car accident. She would be buried in Arkansas, and her husband, Tom, presided over the funeral. Yeah.
Ugh.
Yep. So no investigation into him. Everything seems hunky-dory.
Cool. Yeah, it does seem hunky-dory. I get it.
Yep.
Yeah.
But now they have to get rid of Marty. But they thought, we should cool down for a bit. That was spring. Let's wait till fall. So in September of 1983, after failing to get Daryl's help, Lorna and Tom turned to his brother / Lorna lover, Dan, and asked him. Lorna offered Dan money from Sandy Bird's life insurance policy, and he accepted. Dan Carter received $5,000 from Lorna and a schedule of her husband's daily activities. Carter passed the money to a coworker who wanted to outsource the job to a hitman in Mississippi because he was like, I can't do this. But the plot fizzled. The so-called hitman just took the money and ran. He's like, he wasn't a cop.
That's what hitmen do.
The money was never returned, and Dan was just out $5,000.
You gotta get a quality hitman.
Truly.
Do not go to Craigslist.
Mm-mm. But it was 1983, so there wasn't even Craigslist. But he knew a guy who knew a guy who knew a guy, and that guy ended up being...
Who knew a shitty guy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, or an amazing guy who's like, sure, I'll do it, and then doesn't do it, just takes the $5,000.
A shitty hitman, I'll say.
What? That's a genius theft. Who's going to report that? I gave $5,000 to this guy to kill my friend's husband.
Yes, but you have to build up your reputation as a hitman to begin with. So, like, you're kind of only building up your reputation / value.
I'm saying don't be a hitman at all. Just use fake names and pretend to be a hitman, take the money, and then don't ever do it.
I'm saying that it's not the way to build a credible hitman persona.
But if you're a different persona every time, you don't have to build a credible hitman persona.
All right, well, good thing neither of us were hitmen in the 80s.
For some idiot if I don't care about my credible hitman persona while I'm fishing for some idiot on Craigslist to give me $5,000 to kill his wife.
But I think back then you would have to have like accreditations, like
maybe
references and whatever.
But if you're referred by a friend of a friend and that friend is just in on it,
your friend's gonna get discredited real fast and maybe killed.
Nah, it's gonna be fine.
Maybe killed.
November of 1983. Within a month of trying to hire a hitman, Dan was arrested for solicitation of murder. So the hitman also, I guess, turned him in.
Whoops. Weird.
January 1984, Dan Carter pled guilty to criminal solicitation in the failed plot to arrange for Martin's death and was released on 4 years probation. So he's like, I'm not touching this. I am not touching this anymore. November 4th, 1983. The Andersons, Marty, and Lorna were returning from Fort Riley, where they had gone to pick up a camouflage uniform for Marty, who was captain in the Army Reserve. Initially, Lorna's account went this way. She was driving with Marty and their kids in the minivan when she felt ill and asked him to pull over so that she could pull off the roadway near Junction City around 6:15, I think, p.m. She ran into a field to be sick and dropped her keys there. She then called to her husband to help her look for the keys. While they were searching for the keys, a man wearing a black ski mask appeared from behind the van, demanded Marty Anderson's wallet, and then shot him to death.
What? Seems later, very random.
Lorna changed her story. She would later state that her illness was feigned and that this was a prearranged location and Tom Bird was parked nearby. According to Lorna, as per Tom's plan, he approached, demanded Martin's wallet, and fired, shooting him 3 times in the head. The gun used was Marty's own gun, killed by his own gun, that she had taken from her house's basement months earlier and handed over to Tom. These people are so fucking stupid.
They're very messy.
I can't. The original plan was for Lorna to also be shot in the shoulder to make the robbery appear legitimate, but Tom had run out of ammunition trying to shoot Marty. And if it's like, I don't know how much could have been kept in there, but he had to be a pretty bad shot.
Oh, God.
In a shocking development, police found the story of a random mugger waiting on the side of a deserted road just in case someone felt like pulling over to puke to be slightly unbelievable and launched an investigation.
Just in case someone had to pull over to puke.
You never know.
It's just like on a random stretch of
I
random
always
highway.
camp out on Puke Road.
Oh, this'll get them.
It's where all the dames go to puke.
Right after all those switchbacks.
It's a windy one. This stretch of Puke Road has been profitable for years.
To be fair, we call it Poop Park.
Yeah.
That's why.
But we never robbed and shot anyone there.
No, but I always shit my pants at Puke Park. No, my sister always shit her pants at Puke Park.
That wasn't you. That was Madeline.
That was Madeline.
So it was investigations into the death of Marty Anderson that led to the review of Sandy's death. Developments in the case, and now this new case, led police to believe that Sandy's death may have been murder because 2 affair partners losing their respective spouses in the span of 4 months is pretty suspicious.
Yeah.
So they exhumed Sandy's body for a second autopsy performed by a different doctor, a man named Dr. William Eckert, and he noted many additional injuries. The second autopsy revealed fractures on the left shoulder blade and a laceration on top of her head, indicating a considerable amount of impact or blunt trauma, which, according to Dr. Eckert, was capable of rendering a person unconscious instantaneously.
God, that's like a lot.
Yep. Dr. Eckert also found 3 linear type injuries above the left wrist, which was fractured, a similar injury on the right arm above the wrist, and one in the elbow joint of the right arm. Dr. Eckert was of the opinion that the injuries on the back of her arms were defensive injuries. Dr. Eckert explained defensive injuries as injuries caused when a person has their arms outstretched in an effort to ward off blows in an attack. So in the doctor's opinion, the linear marks above her wrist could have been caused by an instrument such as the branch of a tree, a baseball bat, a pool cue, or a tire iron. Not looking good. Not looking like a car crash. In Dr. Eckert's opinion, the injuries to Sandra Bird's kidney could have been caused by her falling from a height in excess of 20 feet.
Oh.
Now, this next part, is it's also an important part of the opinion of Dr. Eckert was that he found no injuries on Sandy's body, which could have been caused by her ejection from an automobile. It was like none of this is consistent with that. So this is a note from our one of our researchers, Kathy, that I completely agree with. She said, I find this interesting because it seems that Dr. Gabriel, the first autopsy, that Dr. Gabriel's initial assessment wasn't necessarily incorrect. It was just incomplete. I was able to find any information on why the initial assessment didn't really consider the additional injuries based on the other people's reaction. A reverend doing a murder was literally unfathomable.
Yeah.
Pastor Smith, the friend that had been on that pastor's couples weekend, would later testify that he thought Sandy had died by suicide because he didn't think that it was an accident and also couldn't believe that it was murder, that Tom would do it.
So that's the only other reasonable explanation, but she has these defensive wounds.
Yep. But if the initial doctor missed those wounds and they're already like societally preconditioned to be like, oh, this is a pastor's wife and not even think of the pastor, I think there was like some internal bias. I think what she's explaining here is that there's nothing to indicate that Dr. Gabriel was intentionally negligent to like save anybody's behind. I think he was just not thorough enough, which is frankly egregious in forensic science,
but not unheard of.
Not unheard of, and humans are human. And also I think he has, like everyone does, internal biases that like had an impact on his assessment. Mm-hmm. And now that we have a lot more obvious clues that point us toward homicide, we're doing this second autopsy under a totally different lens. Mm-hmm. You know, it's just an interesting thing.
Yeah.
So, quote, in my opinion, Eckert said, this represents foul play. He believes she had been struck on the head with a blunt object and had died from a blow to the back that probably happened when she fell from the bridge. He found marks on her wrists indicating that someone had grabbed her and marks on her ankles indicating that someone had held her there while perhaps dragging her. With Dr. Eckert's findings, further investigation occurred into Sandy Bird's death, trying to answer the question, did Sandy die after getting ejected from a moving car in a tragic car accident, or was she killed in a brutal attack on the bridge and her body thrown over the bridge railing into the river? Lorna flipped on Tom at trial, stating that Tom had told her what really happened after Sandy's funeral.
Oh.
So this is what Lorna says, that Tom told her. After the funeral, Tom returned to Emporia and told Lorna that he had driven Sandy out to Rocky Ford Bridge. They walked out onto the bridge and Bird had struck his wife with a tool taken from the car, so the tire iron fits. He tried to push her off the bridge, but she held onto the railing. She wasn't dead. Blood that was the same blood type as Sandy would be found on the bridge railing. So he kicked her until she fell over the side of the bridge. He then climbed down himself and dragged her body down to the water and then ran the car off the road, jumping out before it went over the precipice. He was wearing jogging shorts under his clothes, so he threw his shoes into the woods and ran barefoot 8 miles back to the house. He dumped his clothes into trash cans.
8 miles.
Oh, God. No. No. I barely want to drive 8 miles.
It's the most unbelievable part of this alibi.
Yeah, but he's a jogger.
Story. Oh, yeah. Oh, God.
Yep.
And a fucking minister.
Yeah.
Ugh.
The jogging minister. He dumped his clothes into trash cans along the way. His feet were still bruised and scarred from the run a week later, Lorna said. And according to the babysitter who had been watching the kids that night for the Birds, he returned home after midnight wearing dress slacks, a tie, and a shirt. The church did not have a shower, and he lived only a mile away, making the outfit a strange choice after allegedly taking a run. Tom Bird would say that the babysitter was mistaken. He had thrown on a polo shirt after jogging, and she was misremembering the shirt and tie from other times that she had seen him. But the jury would see this as more of a corroboration that he ditched his clothes, went to the church, changed into clean clothes that he kept there, and went home. And the babysitter was like, yeah, that's what he was wearing when he got back. Uh-huh.
Ooh, that's creepy as fuck.
Yeah. Yeah. Lorna testified that Tom did not want to get a divorce from his wife because he was afraid of what it would look like in the community because I'm the minister.
No fault,
I'll
baby.
kill her instead.
No fault.
Seriously. Lorna would say, quote, even though the Lutheran Church did not condemn divorce, Tom believed for his ministry and what he wanted, divorce would not look right. It wouldn't be proper, and he always said it was the lesser of two evils for Marty and Sandy to be killed than for it to go on as they were. Yeah. Okay. This guy is the fucking worst. Lorna also testified that Bird justified the murder as the lesser of two evils. So, yeah, he said it was less wrong for Marty to be killed than for him to slowly destroy the girls and I. Because I think Lorna was also planting some seeds that like Marty might have been abusive, but there's nothing to support that.
I can see that, and I really don't want to put too much weight into that. Yeah. I mean, like
it was
until
she's a piece of shit.
Yeah.
He's a piece of shit. Right. She's a piece of shit. They're both pieces of shit.
And they're going to weaponize whatever.
Anything. Yeah, to justify their bullshit. So in February of 1985, Tom Bird was charged and convicted with first-degree murder of Sandy Bird, but he was acquitted for the murder of Marty Anderson based on apparent lack of evidence. He totally did it with Marty's gun. They just couldn't prove that it was him in court. He was wearing that mask. He didn't leave behind any evidence. The only quote-unquote witnesses were potentially the Anderson children from the minivan up on the street while seeing their father be shot in cold blood in a field after their mom puked.
You cannot.
Yeah. So they are not reliable witnesses, and even if they were, this guy was in a mask. They don't know who fucking Tom Bird is.
Yeah.
They just couldn't prove it was him.
Oh, that's sick.
March of 1985, phone records showed that Tom Bird's collect calls from the penitentiary to Lorna's home had ceased. So they finally broke up in March of 1985. After all this, they were together for like a couple years.
Okay.
July 1985, because Lorna can't be alone for long, she announced that she had married Randy Eldridge, a born-again Christian and family friend, but they would divorce in 1990, LOL. She didn't really get it like any jail time, as far as I know. I think she, because she testified against Tom and she actually didn't kill, I think she got some like loose conspiracy charge, but I think she took a deal. She did go to prison for like a hot minute, but currently they're both out of prison. Bird was paroled in June of 2004 and discharged from parole about 2 years later in July of 2006. And from a 2017 article, this said, quote, the two never spoke again after entering prison. Bird never admitted guilt, remarried to a school teacher, and is now a marriage counselor in prisons.
God help you.
Yep.
Oh, God.
Lorna also remarried by proxy while still in prison to Terry Moore in 2004. She served 21 years being paroled in 2006. I thought I misremembered this. I thought she'd had a really light sentence, but no, she didn't. They both
21
served
fucking years.
Yeah.
That's pretty.
They both served about 21 years.
Thick.
Yeah, well, I'm glad.
I'm glad
don't know
too.
Why I thought differently, but yep, there you go.
Oh.
So that's my case.
That is really, it feels
messy.
really candy adjacent, minus like the acts.
It really does. In the community, kind of family friends.
Upholding appearances.
Yup. Oh. Wasn't there a pastor? She played volleyball like at the church or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, they met at the church.
That's like where they fell in lust.
That's right.
Oh my God. Well, thank you so much, Stacy Klein, for your fan pick of Kansas crimes.
This was fun.
I hope you've learned a lot.
I sure did.
I'm disgusted and also am very excited to visit Kansas. So thank you so much for listening. And we'll see you next week.
Bye-bye.